Schooling is one of the most affected aspects in the human life as we fight with this unseen enemy called COVID-19. It seems that the road for the journey of the dreaming students towards the dream they seek was paved with obstacles. Many students in the present are now suffering with lack of communications with their teachers, insufficient gadgets, poor internet connections, and inavailability of school libraries, and so much more. Since the rise and threat of this COVID-19 pandemic, many, many countries around the world have decided to temporarily close schools, which affects millions of students. The resumption of the face-to-face classes can greatly contribute to the resumption of the better learnings of the students, but it can also increase the risk of getting more people infected with COVID-19 since there is no vaccine that guarantee 100% protection from the said virus. School reopening to face-to-face classes must be carefully guided to ensure the safety of students as well as teachers and staffs. Studying and planning for the execution of school health protocols must be supported by truthful data. Last December 11, 2020, the World Health Organization has published checklists to support the reopening of schools. The checklist that was given by the World Health Organization was studied by many experts to support and to contribute to the safety of students as well as teachers and staffs. In conclusion, school health protocols in conducting the face-to-face interactions must be planned carefully and following the national and international guidelines to ensure the safety of everybody. A friendly reminder to everyone, just by keeping ourselves safe is already helping the community. Thank you.
COVID-19 pandemic have a great impact to our life and to our society. People stays at home in order for them to be safe and establishment closes. Government mandated all schools all over the Philippines to temporarily close because of the threat of COVID-19 virus to spread. For the past 2 years, we are facing the new normal, and we are introduced to the new way of learning, the virtual and the online learning. And it's not easy to cope things up. We face difficulties and challenges such as poor internet connection, limited resources, insufficient gadgets, miscommunication of students to teachers, and many more. Now, vaccines are being introduced to us to lower the risk of being affected or being infected of the COVID-19 virus. And the classes is slowly getting back to normal. The resumption of face-to-face classes should always be following the safety protocols and guidelines mandated by the government. And in order for them, in order for the students, teachers, and other stakeholders of the schools to be safe, according to the shared responsibility recommendation of face-to-face classes by Secretary Leonor Magtolis Briones, face-to-face classes is necessary for the students' social, skills education. On the final note, vaccines cannot give you 100% guarantee of your safety. Safety protocols that is mandated by the government should be always implemented and followed in your schools, in your home, and especially in yourself, because it is the only way to get to lower the risk of being infected with the virus in the face-to-face classes. Always remember, safety comes with awareness, and awareness starts with you. Stay safe and thank you.
Greetings, my name is ABIGAIL. AMPO. I study Bachelor's of Science in Nursing and I belong to Section N14. Today I'll be sharing my view on the resumption of face-to-face classes. As we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic has introduced uncertainty into many major aspects of our society, nationally and globally, but most importantly, it has affected the aspect of our educational institutions. When the virus struck the world, our government authorities have called to close the schools and for classes to be temporarily halted. Now, in response to this, UNESCO provided that distance learning be implemented through the use of online platforms for the students. However, researchers have shown that this rapid switch from face-to-face classes to distance learning has affected the academic integrity of the students. Even at home, the students are spending considerably less time studying and are even cheating on their classes. Impacts are even more severe for those families and their children who are financially disadvantaged, as well as those people who have grown accustomed to the usual face-to-face learning modality. All these learning loss continue to emerge as lockdowns became frequent, with data suggesting that there was an enormous drop in completed classwork. Without direct interaction between instructors and learners, the students tend to feel less passionate about the work, leaving students to submit half-finished classwork and even having difficulties answering them. With this, we are at a high time to go back to the traditional way of face-to-face instructions. According to OECD studies, school performance hinges critically on maintaining close relationships with teachers. Face-to-face classes offer much better understanding and recollection of the lesson content and gives both the learner and the instructor the opportunity to bond with one another. Resumption of face-to-face classes must be well maintained and organized, and teachers, including school staff, are encouraged to work together to develop strategies that both ease the impact of the virus as well as how it affects the students holistically. In conclusion, even on a limited basis, attending classes physically will help lessen the challenges brought about by distance learning and help instructors directly address the needs of their students. Additional precautions against the virus include wearing face masks, using hand sanitizer, and frequent classroom disinfection must be maintained. Stay safe. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. Please allow me to introduce myself. I am Siegfried Andre Avila, and I am a nursing student in Section N14 of Bachelor of Science in Nursing program. My speech is about the return of face-to-face classes. To add to the discussion, I'd want to offer some of my own experiences as a student in terms of the benefits of face-to-face classes and also their influence on the students. I consider myself as a decent student. I am proficient in a certain subject, but how well a teacher teaches is entirely dependent on the teacher. The return of face-to-face classes can be very beneficial to us, college students, since we can broaden our knowledge and use skills learned in an online setting. But for now, I believe that limited face-to-face classes is sufficient when you are third or fourth year. But for now, uh, as a first year, I think I cannot put myself in that situation because it is very dangerous since there is a new variation of the virus called Omicron. It is more lethal than the original virus. But I'm also looking forward to wearing that nursing uniform with pride and recognition in the near future because it is very comforting to see it since it represents professionals who actually care. Because there are less distractions in face to face sessions than at home, of course. It is very busy at home, so a lot of chores and things to do. We can concentrate more entirely on our studies if we have face to face sessions. You may feel more at ease or study more quickly in a familiar traditional classroom situation because we use our devices to frequently. Face-to-face classes keeps our mental health steady by lowering anxiety, sadness, and other negative impacts induced by online classes because you can actually socialize with other people, which is actually good for your mental health. Keep in mind, though, that COVID-19 is a virus and we have no clue what will happen next. Even when we allow kids to return to class, we must nevertheless follow measures to safeguard ourselves, our families, and anyone whom we may come in contact with. Thank you.
People are devastated with the events that have unfolded around the world lately. The most serious one and very alarming is the rise of the latest virus, which is the COVID-19. People are required to stay at home, wear masks at all times, and as much as possible limit their trips outside, even when shopping for their basic needs, which is food and water. Because of this, students' lives have been greatly affected. Online classes have been implemented, and this is a really big setback for them. Most do not have the capability to adjust and cope with a new setting. Some students have financial issues and aren't able to buy the gadgets needed for online classes. Some do not have stable internet connections. As we all know, we live in a third world country and it is really expected. Some cannot fully understand with just watching a video online. Some have adapted, but they still struggle to pass their projects on or before their deadline. This conflict does not only apply to students but to teachers as well, and I know for a fact that people will most likely choose the resumption of the face-to-face classes. The majority will always choose to have face-to-face classes because it has its multiple advantages. One is that the students are more likely able to concentrate with the discussions. Unlike online classes, there are big chances that most cannot hear due to the poor internet connections, or they choose not to listen because they are in the comfort of their own home. I know that most students may feel more comfortable when learning in a familiar and traditional classroom. Also, a survey from McKinsey states that, and I quote, children still learn better through a classroom-based teaching. As far as I am concerned, face-to-face classes must be implemented soon. Students are extremely struggling about this new setup, and it seems like they are only passing the requirements and did not learn anything. As long as the students are fully vaccinated and following the safety protocols, it is possible to enforce the limited face-to-face classes.
Schooling is one of the most affected aspects of human life due to coronavirus disease 2019 COVID-19 pandemic. Since the rise and threat of the pandemic, many countries around the world have decided to temporarily close schools that have affected millions of students. School reopening for face-to-face interactions must be carefully planned to ensure the safety of students as well as our teachers and school staff in a staged fashion, especially in following physical distancing. Planning and execution of school health protocols during this pandemic must be supported by the truthful data being given by various institutions. Last December 11, 2020, the World Health Organization (WHO) has published checklists to support school reopenings and the preparation for the possible resurgence of COVID-19. World Health Organization cited that the checklist is aligned with and builds upon existing COVID-19 related World Health Organization's guidelines and is structured around protection measures, which are related to: first is the hand hygiene and respiratory etiquette. The second one is physical distancing. Third one is the use of masks in school. Fourth one is the environmental cleaning and ventilation. The fifth one is respecting procedures for isolation of all people with symptoms. The checklist helps policymakers and school officials to enhance compliance and adherence to public health protocols in the time of the pandemic. In conclusion, school health protocols in conducting face-to-face classes must be planned carefully, following national and international guidelines to ensure that students will be safe or at least mitigate the effects of COVID-19. Well, after all, students' lives matter as education does to them. That is the responsibility of every government to ensure its fulfillment. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I am JESSABELLA, BAYLOSIS Section N14, Bachelor of Science in Nursing. I will be speaking to you today about the resumption of the face-to-face classes. To begin, the Department of Education has the approval of President Rodrigo Roa Duterte to conduct face-to-face classes in very select schools within areas with low COVID-19 risk for the incoming year of 2022. In this pandemic happens, our environmental challenges are responsible for adversely affecting the health and livelihoods of individuals and communities. Face-to-face learning, students will be able to concentrate harder on their learning because there will be fewer distractions than if they were at home. With face-to-face classes is an opportunity to interact with teachers and classmates. If the students have any questions or clarifications about the lectures, can directly ask the teacher. In my perspective, communication is the best way of learning just by taking face-to-face classes. In order to fulfill as the online students need to be proactive on their studies and take responsibility for their own learning. Online education is not for everyone as it takes to be able to attain online class because of some reasons of no internet connections, especially in the rural areas. Financially and lack of technologies, so many. Many students struggles to study at home during the COVID-19 pandemic due to lack of motivation as well as social media and any other distractions. In conclusion, school health protocols in conducting face-to-face classes must carefully follow national and international guidelines to ensure that students will be safe or at least mitigate the effects of COVID-19. Teachers, students, and school staffs must be bring hand hygiene and most importantly wear face masks to ensure our safety. After all, students leaves matter as education does to them. That is the responsibility of every government to ensure its fulfillment. I believe that a resumption of the face-to-face classes can be a more convenient education. Taking in schools can also provide more opportunities to be a part of physical education. Well, that's all, and stay safe.
Good day, everyone. I'm Sarlene G. Villanes, and now I'm going to deliver my speech. Well, for the resumption of the face-to-face classes, it is a good news for us students who have a hard time learning without any interaction with other people. There is a huge difference between learning through online and learning through face-to-face. And as what I have observed, I prefer learning through face-to-face class because I can interact with the instructors and share my thoughts or learning about a certain topic. I get active and my senses works if I interact with people personally. Because right now, while learning through online, I have a hard time focusing and I can't even manage my time for there is a lot of distractions. Students has different kind of views in terms of learning. Some prefer online class and some prefer face-to-face classes. The resumption of face-to-face classes gives me excitement while at the same time I'm nervous because I wonder if I am still a good learner when it is a face-to-face class. But the most important thing is to get back to our normal setup of learning. And lastly is about mental health because when in an face-to-face settings, you can interact with other people. You can say your problem, why you are sad, and most especially being with other people through face-to-face classes. You can interact. You can have growth in learning through different things in life, in education, and anything. Or you want to be inspired, or you want to be influenced by their thoughts, or they will be influenced by your thoughts or your opinion, that they would learn and you can also learn from them. And most important thing is that it is how you let yourself grow in some point when it is in a face-to-face classes. In a face-to-face classes, you are exposed to different kinds of learner. You will indulge or you can be exposed through different views, different opinion. So it is up to you where you want to learn how to be someone to be in the future. It will help you in some point of your life. So the resumption of the face-to-face classes will help the students for their growth, for their education, and for their being. Be active as well, and how they build themselves to be a good student and anything that they can be. And that is all. Thank you.
Good day. Today I would like to give my view on the topic resumption of face-to-face classes. But before that, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Dolores Magdalene Bulado of Bachelor of Science in Nursing, class N14. So, resumption of face-to-face classes. Due to the coronavirus disease or COVID-19 pandemic, education is one of the most affected elements of human existence. Since the pandemic's emergence and threat, many governments throughout the world have decided to temporarily close schools, affecting millions of students. As a result, students, particularly youngsters, have been experiencing a learning crisis as a result of the pandemic. Face-to-face institution is still required for education. The social dimension of distance learning modalities cannot completely replace learning that allows students to engage with their lecturers and classmates. The ability of students to learn on their own is inconsistent. Household resources to help children learn are also uneven, influenced by household income, education of household members, internet access, the number of children in the household who require assistance, and household members' work situations. Learners who find it challenging to learn on their own and who lack home capacity for instructional help will be left behind if teachers do not provide more consistent instructional guidance. Without direct instructor supervision, students and households dedicate radically different amounts of time to the learning process, allowing teachers to see if their students face to face. even on a limited basis, will give them more opportunities to monitor their development and provide necessary instructional supervision and interventions. School reopening for face-to-face classes must be carefully organized in stages to protect the safety of students, instructors, and school employees, particularly after physical distance. All the more so given the unique problems and risks that students face. Carefully designed health standards and strict enforcement are required to ensure a safe return to school in regions where face-to-face sessions are permitted. COVID-19 is unique in that it is mostly transferred through respiratory contact or exposure to an infected individual. This can occur at any moment or in any location. As a result, in the context of the return of face-to-face classes, health standards should be observed at home, when traveling, and while in the classroom. In conclusion, school health protocols conducting face-to-face classes must be planned carefully, following national and international guidance to ensure that students will be safe or at least mitigate the effects of COVID-19. After all, students' lives matter as education does to them. That is the responsibility of every government to ensure its fulfillment. Thank you.
Back when the first lockdown happened, we were all shocked, scared, and worried about what is happening in the world right now. We have seen how much the COVID-19 pandemic affects our lives drastically, whether it is physically, emotionally, or mentally. We face a crisis and financial shortage during the lockdown. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed our education as well. It has resulted in schools shutting all across the world. We instantaneously transition to online learning and modular, whether it is synchronous or asynchronous classes. One of our concerns is that during the pandemic, there has been a lack of access to equipment and the internet. Students without reliable, fast internet or suitable devices for schoolwork and learning outcomes from remote classes may not be the same as in-person classes, because learning at home can have so many distractions and challenges for both students and teachers. We have heard many complaints, rants on social media, and the number of students who committed suicide or made an attempt to commit suicide because of loaded of schoolworks, and some would say that they cannot learn effectively in online classes. One of the effects of online classes to students are citing that many other factors such as loneliness, issues within academics, relationships, money problems, and general helplessness play into that statistic. It was not an easy journey to manage and experience. We were all affected and have suffered, but eventually we have gradually adapted to the new normal. For nearly 2 years, we have endured all of that, and now that we are no longer in panic mode and the COVID-19 vaccines have been rapidly developed and distributed to help fight the pandemic, I believe that we can now swiftly back to the resumption of face-to-face classes. Because during the process of developing the vaccine, all steps have been taken to ensure safety and effectiveness. CDC also recommends that we should get the COVID-19 vaccine as soon as we can to protect ourselves and others, so that we can also guarantee the safety of the students and our teachers when the face-to-face classes are back. In addition, prolonged school closures may have a long-term negative effect on students. Their physical and mental health, development, safety, and well-being are at risk. More screen time or exposure to the internet may greatly affect our health. This is why we have to take action to prevent these problems that may occur in the future. Moreover, some schools from different countries have already reopened their schools successfully, and I think that it is also time for us to open our face-to-face classes. I believe that schools in the Philippines can reopen safely because there will be safety measures to follow and ensure the safety of the students who will be attending in-person classes. All possible steps to mitigate virus transmission. If schools continue to close, more children and youth, particularly the most vulnerable and disadvantaged, will drop out of school. Safety measurement implementation for the resumption of classes and the effective learning for the students should be the top priority, because it is more fun, engaging, and informative to learn alongside with your classmates. However, if the system will not be carefully planned and thought out, things will not change for the better.
Hello everyone, especially to Ma'am Gatam Isan, employee Marie J. Bustamante from BSN N14, and today I'll be talking about an interesting topic, which is resumption of face-to-face classes. Due to COVID-19, a lot of activities, stores, and buildings were closed. However, one of the most affected are the students. Because of the disease, we, the students are forced to adopt a new way of learning, which is online learning. I am one of the many students who first dove into e-learning during the pandemic. During this challenging time, it seems that our gadgets are all we have. We try our very best to make use of what we have at home and ensure that we don't get left behind, but still, I can't help but wonder, how's everyone adjusting and coping up with the problems that arise, especially the power interruption and lack of internet connection? COVID-19 has resulted in schools shutting all across the world. Over 1.2 billion of students are out of schools worldwide. As a result, education has undergone significant transformation with the rise of e-learning, in which instructions is done remotely and via digital platforms. However, for nearly 2 years, the Commission of Higher Education, or CHED, has announced that the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Disease has approved face-to-face classes in all degree programs in higher education institutions in areas under Alert Level 2 status or Modified General Community Quarantine or MGCQ. This will, however, be limited to a maximum of 50% capacity to guarantee that health and safety regulations are properly followed by the schools. Furthermore, the resumption of face-to-face classes has its advantages and disadvantages. Of course, we'll be glad to be back in school and interact with our classmates and instructors, and we won't worry about losing internet connection because we're in the classroom. Also, our instructors may point out important sections in the textbooks which can help us, and assignments are handed in personally, which means we don't have to worry about getting lost or not handed in. We get feedback in our assignments and exams in real time, no longer waiting periods. However, face-to-face classes can add up a lot of money in terms of fees, transportation, school supplies, textbooks, and our allowance. Also, to keep up with the regular academic routine, we must get up early and ensure that we adhere the health protocol, otherwise we may regret it. For me personally, I do think that face-to-face classes is more effective than online, especially in college, and sooner or later, if all the people will get vaccinated, all students can have regular classes like in the past. That's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed watching and listening to the video, and I'm looking forward to yours and to the topic resumption of face-to-face classes. I'm looking forward to see all of you in next semester, and this is Chloe saying it's okay not to be okay. Thank you for watching. Bye.
Education is an important aspect in a person's life. It is the key to success in the future and to have many opportunities in our life. A face-to-face class is one in which students, instructors, and facilitators meet together in the same place and at the same time. A face-to-face is a live meeting among students, instructors, and facilitators. A face-to-face interaction can help to break down barriers and provide real cross-cultural experiences and networking opportunities, thereby assisting in sustaining relationship and encouraging the sharing of knowledge. Because of the pandemic, COVID-19, the administration implemented the online learning which we are currently using. There is an advantage and disadvantage in this platform. Students experiencing and learning how can they manage their time properly and how to deal with their problems and anxiety. Bring back the face-to-face class an important component of the classroom learning, the social and the communicative interaction between the student and teacher and student and student. A student's ability to ask a question, to share an opinion, or to disagree with a point of view are fundamental learning activities. It is often through conversations, discourse, discussion, and debate among students and between instructors and students that a new concept clarified, a skill practiced, an original idea is formed and encouraged, and ultimately a learning objective is achieved.
Hi guys, my name is Hart Carido from Section N14. Schooling is one of the most affected aspects of human life due to coronavirus disease COVID-19 pandemic. In a recent jurisprudence published The author reminded every country of their responsibility to come up with strategies to reopen schools safely. This paper retreats the adherence of school health protocols are significant in the delivery of face-to-face classes, following national and international guidelines in mitigating the effects of COVID-19 pandemic. As a public health crisis, face-to-face learning is better than online learning because have access to various learning resources on campus versus up. Face-to-face allows students to have instant gratification with answers and help. When a student is in a class, they can ask questions while it is fresh on their mind or help with a particular problem. If the student was at home online, they would have to wait for the instructor to email them back. Face-to-face students also gain from socialization with peers and interaction with teachers. Face-to-face communication allows the entire experience to not only be heard but also seen and felt. Students are able to physically see the work and are able to use tactile stimulation for their learning needs. Face-to-face students are able to find out the type of learner they are. In discovering their learning style, students can use their knowledge to guide them in their educational experience and needs. Students are able to take the time to understand and figure out problems with the resources that are provided. Face-to-face classes remain a necessity for education, the social aspect of learning where students are able to interact with their teachers and classmates cannot be fully replaced by distant learning modalities. Thank you.
Good day, I'm Gwyneth Miram Ardela Cruz from BSN Section N14. The great aim of education is not knowledge but action. Education is a very important part of our life and no one can deny importance of education in this era. Due to the coronavirus illness or COVID-19 pandemic, it is one of the most affected spheres of human activity. Since the emergence and threat of the pandemic, a number of countries around the world have decided to consider closing schools that have impacted millions of students. The government's Department of Education has created rules for implementing online and modular distance learning provision of education to avoid students from becoming infected with the disease. Let's face it, having to attend lessons without being in a classroom is a very different experience, while online learning has given children a sense of normalcy by allowing them to see the faces of their teachers and fellow students. It is still not the same as being physically there in school and in the same setting as your classmates. It all been too keen on setting up limited face-to-face classrooms for a chosen number of schools, and in the case of colleges, for specified programs and degree courses and the places where there are less COVID cases and higher vaccination rates. School reopening for face-to-face contacts must be carefully organized in its stages to protect the safety of students, instructors, and school employees, particularly after physical separation. During this pandemic, the planning and execution of school health policies must be based on accurate data provided by numerous institutions. The checklist is designed around protective measures related to school reopening readiness and is connected with and builds on current COVID-19 related principles. Prior to implementation, it uses the prevent, detect, isolate, threat, and reintegrate framework, emphasizing the importance of having access to water, sanitation, and hygiene facilities, proper ventilation in classrooms, ensuring that classrooms layout allow for physical separation between people, prioritization of students who will benefit the most from limited face-to-face learning, and stimulation activities. In conclusion, school health protocols in conducting face-to-face classes must be planned carefully following national and international guidelines to ensure that students will be safe or at least mitigate the effects of COVID 19. Our utmost priority is the health and safety of our learners and teachers while ensuring that learning happens and learning gaps are addressed. After all, students' lives matter as education does to them. That is the responsibility of every citizenship to ensure its fulfillment.
Good day. My name is Bianca Stephanie de la Torre from the BSN 1 Section N14. Face-to-face classes is a very successful method in acquiring knowledge and skills, since it has a variety of learning methods such as reading, writing, conversations, presentations, film clips, group works, demonstrations, and practice. But what do you think in the resumption of face-to-face classes? During a global health crisis like the ones we are dealing with right now, decreasing the risk of getting the virus could be a very wise choice for those with chronic health conditions, for whom getting the virus that aggravates those chronic illnesses could have disastrous consequences. After all, there are still people who are unvaccinated. Sure, face-to-face classes has benefits for students, and one of the most beneficial means of physically being in a classroom is the response time a person receives from an actual person. During face-to-face classes, a person's question will get an immediate answer, whereas online learning means waiting for a response. Studies shows that effective and immediate feedback is crucial to effective learning. Face-to-face classes always has an advantage over online learning because the personal connection between the student and tutor is stronger, and allowing to study with peers, we can gain new knowledge. Despite being accustomed to the new normal mode of learning, I hope that students are looking forward to the most exciting days of their lives when they can return to their classrooms.
Good day, I'm Clarice Denise Sanchez de Solok of Class N14 under the nursing program, and today I will be talking about the return of face-to-face classes amidst the pandemic. The pandemic, due to the COVID-19 disease, surely took a toll on us all. We were robbed of our plans and the things we used to do on a daily basis. We couldn't go to school, we couldn't go to work, and it felt like the world was at a halt for a moment that lasted longer than most expected. Students and their education are two among the many things that the pandemic had the most impact on. Due to the risk we would have had to put ourselves at because of the widespread of the disease all over the country and the world, it was announced that schools were to be closed temporarily, which affected so many students in so many ways. The most common is the adjustment to the new procedures, which we now refer to as the new normal. Of course, it would be difficult for a lot of students to adjust as they have already been used to how it was before the pandemic, and not to mention how our environment affects our performances. It also affected some families as a whole in certain ways, like, say, for example, a family of 5 living in a small house, and both parents are unemployed, or one is employed, but that parent's salary is just enough to cover up the bills and the basic needs of each member of the family. Now, with the online learning, how is that family going to pay for internet access? Where are their children going to have their classes, and how are they supposed to focus and learn comfortably? As the number of the infected is going down and the vaccinated rising, the country has permitted some schools in some places to gradually return to face-to-face classes again. It is exciting to a lot, however, one must still remain cautious. Schools must carefully plan out the reopening in order to ensure the safety of the students, teachers, and staff. Strict implementation of protocols is a must, such as physical distancing, proper wearing of masks, washing of hands, observing cleanliness and ventilation, and following procedures in isolating those with the symptoms of the disease. Following of these procedures religiously will help in enhancing the compliance and adherence of public health protocols in school and even the whole city in these times of the pandemic as it is ongoing. To conclude, strict following of national and global health protocols is a must, and the upcoming return of face-to-face classes should be planned out thoroughly in order to ensure the safety of everyone while inside their schools and to avoid the spreading of the disease. It is important to keep in mind that the health and lives of the students are just as important as education is, and it is the government's obligation and responsibility to ensure that. That would be all. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. My name is Jokohel Z. Dominici, and today I'm going to talk about the resumption of face-to-face classes in our country. In this pandemic, we have been trying our best to survive and stop the virus in spreading. Because of that, the education sector have been greatly affected in fear of contracting the virus in school. Apart from the intermittent Wi-Fi connection or the lack of access to gadgets or the lack of access to the internet, there are school children who also lack a private space at home that is conducive to learning. Not only that, many students also need learning assistance from their parents, and there are parents who are unprepared to take on the role of being a tutor or a teacher, either because they need to earn a living while their children are in school, or else because they lack the knowledge and skill required for the task to their children. Faced with such challenges, education officials are now discussing the possibility of resuming limited face-to-face classes as soon as circumstances allow. If the plan pushes through, the initial areas for the resumption of face-to-face classes will be those without COVID transmission over a certain period of time. President Duterte has said there will be no face-to-face classes until a COVID vaccine becomes available to everyone, including the children. The position may have to be modified, however, if only to reduce the number of students being left behind as a result of pandemic restrictions. With the end of late enrollment on November 21, the DepEd reported nearly 25 million total enrollees in both public and private elementary, high school, and college schools. This means about 2 million students are out of school for this academic year. With face-to-face classes still banned, the government must find innovative ways of promoting and safe, inclusive learning. That is all. Thank you.
Hello, good day. Greetings to all. My name is Andrea Gil Ente. I am from BSN Section N14. As we all know, we are facing the pandemic, not only the Philippines, but the whole world. But even if we are facing this pandemic, we are lucky enough to be healthy, and we are lucky Though we are alive and life must go on, even though we are in this pandemic, we still have duties as a students to learn. So, not every students have the privilege to, for me, not all students have privilege to have nice home, stable internet connections, and even enough to support their everyday living in this pandemic, because some of their families are really struggling in this pandemic. So in my opinion, face-to-face learning is superior to online class learning, since students have access to more learning resources on campus than they do off. Face-to-face interaction allows students to receive immediate feedback and assistance. When a student is in class, they can raise questions or seek assistance with a specific topic while it is still fresh in their minds. Face-to-face communication allows students to complete event to be seen and felt in addition to being heard. Especially the nursing course, it really needs to be a face-to-face class for a student like me could understand more in a classroom rather than in a home or in my room. I can understand way better when I am with my classmates.
A pleasant day, everyone. I am Emmanuel B. Escobar II from Section N14, and I will be giving my views on the topic Presumption of Face-to-Face Class. COVID-19 was one of the deadliest diseases in human history. It infected and killed millions of people across the globe. And the pandemic itself caused billions of dollars in economic losses. The pandemic began when a virulent strain of the COVID virus mutated and became transmissible from human to human. The traditional learning system, also known as the face-to-face class, has been put on hold due to the existence of the coronavirus disease in 2019. This has put a major impact on the education system, and the learning system was out of commission for quite some time. One of the most noticeable effects was when the pandemic was announced. The students of the traditional learning system were placed under home-based learning. This means that the students were not allowed to attend the school classrooms and were to continue their education at home. These students were very excited to be able to continue their education at home, but were very disappointed when they were experiencing more difficulties than traditional learning. Because of this, the students began to experience separation anxiety and became very homesick. The pandemic has forced many schools to close their doors and cancel their classes. But now, many schools are reopening their classrooms to offer face-to-face class for students who are unable to cope with online learning. This means that students can now experience again the traditional learning, which gives a great opportunity to interact with their instructors, ask questions, and get help when they need it. And for those who prefer to continue learning online, many schools are offering online options so students can learn regardless of where they are. COVID-19 is mostly transmitted through respiratory contact or exposure to an infected individual, which can happen at any time or in any place. Therefore, to ensure that students are safe or at least lessen the effects of COVID-19, school health protocols for face-to-face classes must be carefully planned and implemented in accordance with national and international guidelines. That's all, and thank you. I hope you're doing well.
Face-to-face learning. During this time of pandemic, we are forced to have online classes, and it's not easy coping up with the new normal and learn through virtual classrooms. But we are left with no choice. Learning online is very difficult, especially for students like us who struggles to get better internet connection. Plus, we are on the nursing field. We learn a lot of theories in the online class, but then again, as it was said, theory without practice is meaningless. And now, through the help of vaccines and health protocols, the pandemic situation is getting better. And it's a positive sign that we will be able to go back slowly to the usual face-to-face classes. We have a greater chance of completing our tasks and requirements successfully by doing it in a classroom situation. Because if compared and doing it online, there are many factors that could affect us in finishing or complying the tasks required by the teachers. Number one is the unstable internet connection. There are instances when we cannot finish a required task because of power interruption and slow internet connection. And with face-to-face classes, we feel more comfortable and learn more easily in a familiar, traditional classroom situations. We can also access more information and enrich our understanding through our teacher. In the library and laboratory activities, unlike in an online class where we solely rely on what we can read from the internet. Moreover, we have the opportunity to connect with, problem solve, and network with other students from a wide range of backgrounds. We also want to enjoy our college life as this is once in a lifetime experience. And we want to meet our fellow students and hope to also learn from them. But as of now, it was put on hold because of pandemic situations. Face-to-face learning is really effective way to learn knowledge and skills because it often combines different ways of learning including writing, reading, discussion, presentation, projects, group work, demonstration, and practice. And we hope we can slowly get back to normal and learn via face-to-face classes because no online class platform can ever replace the learnings we get through face-to-face.
The rise of the coronavirus disease have set the world in a state of pandemic and have forced nations to implement lockdowns, post strict health protocols, and control citizens' mobility to minimize the spread of the virus. Due to this, the education sector has decided to halt traditional face-to-face classes for the meantime. However, in order to continue education amidst this pandemic, the said sector has opted for distant learning. Even so, I strongly believe that the resumption of face-to-face classes must be implemented as soon as possible, as it is still the best way to provide students a better quality of learning despite this pandemic. Firstly, face-to-face classes offers a different kind of learning experience. As a college student in this time of pandemic, it is a different kind of struggle to have none other than yourself teaching yourself your lessons without being able to ask questions, further explanations, and clarifications to neither your instructors nor your classmates directly. Unlike in traditional face-to-face classes, in online classes, your learning is self-directed. What you learn depends alone on what you teach yourself. And although this is a good way to practice self-discipline and independency, the quality of education that you're getting isn't as good as what you could get from the teaching of your instructors in a face-to-face setting. Secondly, face-to-face classes offers a more engaging learning environment which has less distractions that we could be getting at home. It seems to me that face-to-face classes ensures a greater comprehension and retention of lesson content than online classes. Lastly, face-to-face classes only requires physical and mental presence in order for students to join class discussion. However, in online class setting, a reliable and stable internet connection and a consistent power supply is required from students to have a sustainable education. But with the recent strike of Typhoon Odette last Thursday, electricity has been down across the majority of Caraga, and up till this day, internet connection for all networks is still disabled, hence making us struggle more to finish and submit our designated assessments on time. It is clear to me that while online classes has its own perks that benefits us students, face-to-face classes, in comparison, is still the best, most importantly as it offers us students the quality of learning that we highly sought after. Therefore, if asked if I were for or against the resumption of face-to-face classes, I would gladly stand with the former.
Good day everyone, my name is Daniela Marie L. Gales, Bachelor of Science in Nursing, Section N14. We are going to talk about the resumption of face-to-face classes. Before that, I'm going to share a little bit about my experience on online classes. For me, online classes were pretty overwhelming because I don't have a laptop, I don't have a desktop, my neighbors don't, so I can't really borrow, I only have my phone. And this phone of mine, I'm proud to say that I earned this phone of mine using the money that I work for with my part-time job. So yes, I earned my phone. So in the pandemic, online classes were really overwhelming for me because I'm not used to technology that much. Before I bought my phone, I didn't really have a phone, so it was pretty hard for me. I was pretty new. Not only that, but the pandemic itself is an issue. The internet stability, you can't really control your internet, even if you go to the place where there is a strong signal, you can't control the stability of it, mobile data or internet. So it was pretty hard. Not only that, but quizzes, all of exams have timers. I know in face-to-face classes we do have time, but you can adjust it. You can say to the teacher, ma'am, can you wait for a minute, like that. But on online classes, you really need to hurry up because it's like there's a time. So it's pretty overwhelming. Maratol ka. And for me, in this kind of class environment, I was pretty overwhelmed. I even went to depression. I lost my will to work hard. I don't know why I can't control my brain, especially in the subject DNED. You have to download the app, and I don't have a laptop. My neighbors don't have a laptop, and if I go to computer shops, I'm really uncomfortable with being in an environment where there are more men. I don't, just based on some memories, I don't want to recall. So in the resumption of face-to-face classes, I am really glad, and not only me, but I'm sure a lot of students will be glad, because I know that I'm not the only one facing mentally have problems, So in the resumption of face-to-face classes, a lot of students will be glad. I know that, but maybe some who are used to online classes will be disappointed, maybe, or not. I don't know. It's in their opinion. But for me, I think the resumption of face-to-face classes will be really good.
Healthy greetings, good day. I am Jessica Y. Gonzalez of Class N14 under the nursing program, and today I'll be tackling about the resumption of face-to-face classes. Every person's most important asset is their education. It is a lifelong and ongoing process. It brings about significant change in our lives, allowing us to live lives that are prosperous and fulfilling. Education is the cornerstone of human development. So when COVID-19 was first given to the world and the pandemic began, we all knew that the world, particularly our own country, the Philippines, was unprepared for such a disaster. Many businesses, infrastructure, states, churches, stores, and of course schools have all been forced to close as a result of this. Due to the pandemic, Prospero de Vera III, the chair of the Commission in Higher Education, proclaims that flexible learning will be the norm, and there would be no going back to regular face-to-face classes. there has been a lot of criticism, both favorable and negative. As a student, I am obliged to be in this new normal because I am eager to finish. Similarly, all students are forced to use their technologies, gadgets, and home internet connection for this type of new learning. However, students are not all the same. There are students who want to complete their education but are unable to do so due to a lack of access to various technologies. Instead, they are obliged to work in order to support their families. Not only students are required to do so, teachers and staff as well as professional teachers and other professionals are happy to assist students and assist them in carrying the weight of being in this kind of new normal. To be honest, 2 years of studying at home is exhausting and frustrating because as a student, you question if you're truly learning or simply compiling all of the criteria that have been assigned to you. So when the CHED announced that fully vaccinated students, instructors, and staff might attend to face-to-face classes sessions at 50% capacity in areas under alert level 2 for fully vaccinated students, teachers, and staffs, I felt alive again. So, if you ask me if I accept to resume face-to-face classes, it's a big yes. Since in face-to-face lessons, you won't be concerned if a teacher doesn't respond to your messages because you can already speak with him or her. You won't be concerned about the internet connection, electricity shutdown, or even lending a device to a loved one because we won't be using it anymore. And a reminder, to attain all of these goals, we must adhere to all of the laws and regulation in order to attend face-to-face classes.
We have been in prison for how many months and witnessed ourselves struggle to the multitude of trials that the pandemic has brought upon us. Yet, we remain steadfast and unwavering. A lovely good day to you, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great pleasure to me to be here in this pleasing event. I feel very honored and humbled to see each and every one of you, so thank you for inviting me here. March 2020. I believe it rang a bell, right? A time when we were engaged in our own abode. It has only been almost 2 years, but it feels very, very long. A time when our usual activities was disrupted and we are forced to embrace the new normal. The new normal that caused massive changes in our physical, emotional, spiritual, and even our lifestyle. The new normal that changed our mode of learning. Online classes and modular learning become a norm when the virus is permeating immune system and the illness is prevalent. The intention of our government to close down school is for safety and security, but it has brought upon undeniable truth. Students struggle even more compared to face-to-face classes. In fact, education officials themselves have reported these difficulties being encountered by the students in blended learning. Apart from intermittent Wi-Fi connection or lack of access to gadget or the internet, there are school children who lack private space at home that is conducive to learning. This dilemma does not only affect the students or the teachers or the government officials, but it also tremendously affects the parents of the learners. Many students need learning assistance from their parents, and there are many parents who are unprepared to take on the roles of a tutor, either because they need to earn a living while the children are at school, or either because they lack the knowledge and skills required for the task. We have closed our school doors for so long, and I believe that it is the right time to open it up again. If we cannot compromise the health of our students, we must also consider that we cannot also compromise the learnings of the youth who are the hope of our nation. The education they get must be adequate, and I see no quality education in online classes and modular learning. The competence of our students will be gradually diminished if we continue to hold on to these alternatives. Please, let us think about this.
Good day, everyone. I'm Kirsten Amor, CEO Son of Section N14. There is an education principle that suggests how learning can be maximized when more of the body senses are tend to remember and learn more if they take notes, actively listening, and attentively watching the teacher. Some experts would even argue that handwritten ones are still more effective than their digitally penned counterparts. No other situation in recent history has tested this theory than this pandemic, where a generation of learners have been forced to go to school without going to school. Let's face it, it's really different to attend class without being in a classroom. While online learning has allowed for a semblance of normalcy, with students being able to see at least the faces of their teachers and their fellow learners. It isn't at all the same as being physically present in school, being in the same environment as your classmates. This is why the Department of Education and the Commission on Higher Education have all been too keen on setting up limited face-to-face classes in certain areas for a select number of schools, and in the case of colleges for specific programs and degree courses. A pilot run of limited face-to-face classes has been set. Some have been criticized Philippine education as too slow in implementing a program to allow face-to-face classes to resume. This, however, is not really a problem. Just look at the examples of other countries that hurriedly opened their schools to welcome their students. Most of them had to deal with a renewed outbreak of COVID cases that supposedly started in schools. The Department of Education and Commission on Higher Education has an ample time to really make sure that the face-to-face classes won't face unnecessary disruption. Though there are already limited face-to-face classes here in our country, but according to the Department of Health, the rate of infection is very low. For us students, face-to-face learning ensures a better understanding and recollection of lesson content and give class members a chance to bond with one another.
Around 2 years ago, I remember being at school, hanging out with my classmates, and silently worrying about our final exams. And it was around this time where the coronavirus surged into the Philippines, and even before then, I knew it wasn't a hoax. I wore my mask very diligently and on my own accord, scared of what this virus could do. And as we were huddled up outside of our classroom after class, one of our friends climbs from downstairs and says, "Finals have been canceled." And to me, as ignorant as I was, thought of this as the best news because I believed that this was one less burden as a student. Now, I went back to my dorm that day, and little did I know that this was the last goodbye that I said to my senior high school classmates before the start of lockdown. The following year, I was in 12th grade, and I always knew that the last years of high school were supposed to be the most memorable, yet it wasn't how I imagined it to be. I spent my last year of high school at home, no physical contact with my classmates whatsoever, and it went on like that until now. Here I am in my first year of college, and everything is pretty much the same. And not to romanticize college life, but I always saw myself spending most of my time in a library, getting lost in my textbook, and maybe with a classmate who was pretty much doing the same, yet I'm spending my college life exactly the way I did in my late high school life. It was hard adjusting. It still is now. I believe that one of the saddest things that have happened since quarantine was going online, and I've always been an advocate for resuming face-to-face classes because if you're like me, I've barely been learning. I feel like in the past couple of years, all I have been doing is self-study instead of actually feeling like I'm in school, even though that's how it's supposed to be. it makes me feel alone. Unlike being in the classroom where I'm losing my mind, but at least I have my classmates and my teacher around me. And I don't think we value the mental and emotional drawbacks of online classes, even though this is where the results of our academic output stem from. I believe going online has done more harm than good. And I'm a student myself, so I know how much we've struggled. We aren't learning. We are merely just complying, and this is mainly because, and not to point fingers, but there have been teachers that give more assessments than they normally would in a face-to-face setting because apparently it's easier now. I hope we all know that this isn't the case, and I am all for resuming face-to-face classes, and I hope that one day the situation will allow for it.
Face-to-face learning ensures successful comprehension and retention of lessons and allow each student to bring out the best in themselves and demonstrate their intelligence. The COVID-19 pandemic is causing chaos on the operation and outcomes of educational systems. The closure of schools with economic difficulties provides significant challenges to our educational system because we lack the structures to sustain effective teaching and learning, and we are not created to deal with a situation like this. Students are the ones that are struggling the most, and how much learning and growth they have missed out on. The resumption of face-to-face classes in the aspect of quality learning will help us regain what has been taken from us, which is the opportunity to learn efficiently and effectively without limitations and restrictions, and finally, with so much fun despite the difficulties of face-to-face classes. The resumption of face-to-face classes will allow us to maintain the efficient learning growth that is important to us and should be fostered in order for us to achieve in life. As we gradually adapt to the changes in this new normal, it will be more necessary than ever that we do not lose sight of the importance of learning development, so that we can continue to have a narrow focus on academics, even if online learning is new and not effective to us. It provides inspiration and determination for us students to work harder and study more diligently in order to thrive academically, because it will instill in you the desire to obtain high quality education. Students' performance and accomplishment improve in face-to-face classes because they can comprehend the requirements for a given subject. Face-to-face teaching methods help students to learn more rapidly and provide immediate feedback on their progress. Collaboration and face-to-face learning not only quickens the process of learning and accomplishing our goals, but also the process of training for a real-life context. Face-to-face classes allow us to study and boost our memory growth without being distracted by our devices. Not all of us have access to devices that can help us preserve our knowledge. This new online educational system, in my opinion, is anti-poor because it creates opportunity and enrichment gaps in access to situations or assets that enhance learning and development. However, with the return of face-to-face classes, all students are given equal and equitable opportunities to learn, comprehend, and nurture education. Face-to-face lessons should be resumed, since the long-term consequence of students' inability to learn properly have a lasting impact on their future productivity and growth. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. My name is Ryan Ilishanes, and I am here to present my essay about the resumption of face-to-face classes. The ongoing pandemic has caused a major shift in society. It halted business trades and classes were suspended. The once bustling city suddenly became a ghost town. For students, shifting from face-to-face classes to online learning has caused a major hindrance to learning a single subject. Students from rural areas weren't able to academically showcase their skills since some lacked the privilege of having internet connections and gadgets at home. But now that resumptions of face-to-face classes are in the talks, students like me are more driven to study efficiently since we won't be able to rely on search tabs anymore. Of course, not every school will reopen its classrooms for a good reason. Resumptions of face-to-face classes are both a bitter and a sweet moment. Bitter because we college students will experience once again the antagonizing pain of going to school early in the morning, and the heart-racing fact that we are prohibited from using our phones during exams. To be completely honest, I too have used my phone while taking exams, but now I try to limit it so I can really test my knowledge. However, face-to-face classes also bring the best in you, since you will be able to learn firsthand the knowledge and wisdom given to you by your professor. Based on the statistics about COVID in our city, I can say that we can safely resume face-to-face classes among chosen schools and universities if COVID numbers continuously decrease. Nevertheless, we should still continue following guidelines and policies to lessen our chances of having COVID. Resuming face-to-face classes requires proper behavior and a sense of responsibility. Only those who are vaccinated can attend the limited face-to-face learning, since vaccination is essential to fight the coronavirus. If you are not vaccinated, however, you will be unable to partake in the limited face-to-face classes because your life is more important and the university will not risk it. In conclusion, face-to-face classes is both a bitter and a sweet moment. We may not be able to open our phones, but at least we will be able to learn without the fear of losing connections. But once again, always make sure to follow proper protocols and be responsible so we can end this pandemic once and for all.
Almost 3 years have passed since an unexpected phenomenon happened throughout the world. The catastrophe was so overwhelming that the people used to do have changed. Work, economics, and education are just a few of the things that have totally changed. Though people are gradually adjusting to the new normal, there is a slim chance of returning to the old one. And one of them is the educational system. On the 30th day of January 2020, the World Health Organization, or WHO, declared COVID-19 an outbreak in the global health emergency. Afterward, the countries around the world began taking actions, such as informing the people on what happened and the things that needed to be done. In the Philippines, the government took action by telling the Filipinos to wear masks and face shields all the time, and also to follow the safety protocol. They also established checkpoints in every boundaries here in the Philippines. The schools didn't let the students enter their respective universities and schools, which results in having online classes while waiting for the virus to ease. And unfortunately, the virus became dangerous, unlike what the people expected. With this, the students experienced distress during online learning due to some reasons. One of the advantages of online learning is that it is accessible, since the student can decide on his own when to answer his assessments. On the contrary, online learning's disadvantage is that it affects the student's health, specifically mental and emotional health. And not all the students have the opportunity and the equipment for this learning. A reporter of PhilStar reported that 17 students were dead in the Philippines due to online learning. Furthermore, face-to-face class greatly affects the learning of every student, since it is interactive learning. The students have the ability to ask questions to their classmates and instructors easily. Also, the students can learn more in a classroom arrangement. A study of Dios and Carlo in 2021, it is stated that the students prefer to continue their education in a face-to-face learning process. Thus, face-to-face class is significant to every student. Online learning is not enough for the students' learning efficacy. Besides, face-to-face class cannot just help the person's intellectual, but also the student's mental, emotional, and physical health.
All in all, resumption of face-to-face class is the best way to proceed in the next academic year.
Hi, good day. I am Diane Montes, and I'm from Bachelor of Science in Nursing, Section N14, a Level 1 student. So, resumption of face-to-face classes. As everyone knows, we've been through a lot. Since the day when we were told in our part, we were told that everyone next week will be having a suspension of classes. And you can't be back until further notice, said by our subject teacher at that time, because it was our last day of our final exam, and it was supposedly our recognition or moving up ceremony for the next week. But then all of this started. Everyone hadn't expected this to happen. Like, seriously, for more than 2 years, I guess, we have been locked up in our humble abodes. Didn't know what's happening. Is there still a bright future for us? Everything just keep falling apart. And it was so sad that some of our brothers and sisters didn't make it. They chose to take their own lives. There are lots of news about them. The suicide cases, I mean. And I just felt so sad about it, especially to those individuals who haven't had family support, mental support for them to fight, to continue living. As the resumption of face-to-face classes will start, hopefully, the sooner the better. I hope everyone felt delighted, just like me, and start to burn the passion that has been lit off, hasn't been ignited for years, for the past years. I hope everyone will start anew and try to find their paths back. I hope so. That will be all.
Resumption of face-to-face classes. Good morning, everyone. My name is Elibert Arnegos, and today I will address what aspect of face-to-face learning system we're going to tackle. So first, what is traditional learning system or face-to-face classes? It is an educational way where the teachers delivers knowledge to students in person without any third-party medium. This will ensure that the students can gain knowledge through the teacher's lectures and without any other help from the internet. The teachers can also give instant feedback to the students who have concerns, clarifications, and questions. This will allow the students to focus more on their lectures without the presence of their gadgets. Through this, the interaction of the student to teachers gets boosted. The student learning system becomes more systematic. The class starts at 8 a.m. and ends at 5 p.m. Through this, it will help the students to master the subject through time to time. But due to this pandemic, the traditional learning system or face-to-face has to stop because the virus that we suffer is getting worse. To this, the DepEd and CHED gives two alternative ways, modular and online class. Where in modular, the students will go to their classrooms and get their respective assessments and answer it in their homes. Where in online class, they will use gadgets such as laptops and cell phones in order for them to cope up their assessments and activities. But this time, the DepEd and CHED announces that they will allow face-to-face classes in some areas where they have low cases. So for this, I will tackle what aspect of face-to-face tackle we're going to tackle. So first, our health. We all know that COVID-19 is still a threat for our lives. It can still kill us whether we are rich or poor or young or adult. COVID-19 has no exemptions. Even though most of the students nowadays have got vaccinated in order for them to go to the schools, it is required most of the universities and high school departments. But we have still questions and what ifs in their mind. And also to our parents. It's hard for them to just let go their children because the resumption of face-to-face classes. They have lots of concerns about our safety. It's their first priority. So for the question, how would they manage the safety of the students nowadays? But I still believe that they have ways to cope up this kind of issue. They're ready and prepared to this kind of concerns. Resumption of face-to-face classes is a good way to start this school year. And it is also the dream most of the students, where they can ask questions in person without any barrier, like poor internet connections, blackout or brownout, etc. This will allow the students to focus more and concentrate more on this kind of learning system. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I am Charlene Sinuha, a student of Father Saturnino Orius University under the course of Bachelor of Science in Nursing. Today I'm gonna share my speech about the resumption of face-to-face classes. Before I start my speech, I just want to say that education is very important to us, and there is a quote that I've been learned: education is the most powerful weapon which you can see to change the world, by Nelson Mandela. A pleasant day to each and everyone. As we know, our world is in crisis. We are in this time where everything normal seems non-existence. The stores are closed, people are sick, and education is going completely online for the rest of the semester. With the COVID-19 starting to spread all over in our country, people are affected. The pandemic has changed in our individual life, daily and environmental life, and change in everything. A lot of protocols that we should follow to avoid this virus, like wearing a face mask, face shield, hand sanitizer, alcohol, and etc. Our education format has been changed because of this pandemic. We engage in online learning, modular learning through Zoom, Google Meet, Messenger, and etc. as long as it's related part in social media. 2 years that we live in a pandemic situation, I've experienced a lot of trials and challenges in my life, especially in education's life as a student. Because I'm not prepared in online classes because I don't have any gadgets that I can use, and it's hard for me to study in online, but I still fighting it that trial so that I can continue to my study because it's important. Most students are still suffering in this format of education because not all of the students have a lot of gadgets that they can use it. But we are all fighting it. But we did it. We are all very thankful because face-to-face classes is approved. This coming January 2022, our limited classes is started. During the limited face-to-face classes, we should follow some protocols by our DOH so that we can maintain our social distancing and stop the spreading of the virus. As what I've seen in the news, some schools getting ready their classrooms, arrange it properly, put its hand washing sink and alcohol in the outside of the classroom. And also, I'm very thankful because for almost 2 years, we survived it. Thank you.
Hi, good day everyone. I'm Shara Marie Ole from N14. I'm taking a Bachelor of Science in Nursing at Father Saturnino Orius University. So in this video, I just want to share my opinion about resumption of face-to-face classes. Education life before pandemic was too fun and too exciting. Before, you gotta feel the happiness that you made while in school together with your classmates. You could feel the enjoyment and less hassle situation, unlike now that we are in the new normal system of learning. Before, the classes, group discussions, clarification sessions, and interactive lectures were held on campus or school. There were set days and time frames to take the exams in class. Most teachers administered their tests on paper, and there was limited flexibility with assignments due dates. When the COVID-19 pandemic occurred, courses delivered using student-centered learning methods or face-to-face class were immediately converted into online class and modular, as well as the course assignments due dates were extended as students transitioned to the new online environment. People are confused when it comes to deciding on a mode of education. I believe that face-to-face education is the best option because the effectiveness of online education is still unknown and people do not prefer it. The majority of things can only be learned through face-to-face education because only face-to-face education makes practical sense. The only medium available in face-to-face education is communication between the sender and the receiver. Until the introduction of online education, face-to-face education was the mode of instruction for thousands of years. It is true that nowadays, online education is commonly offered in the educational programs, but technology does not always facilitate the right type of good quality of information that exchange or share. This means that learning potential can be limited. For me, face-to-face education is the best type of education.
Hi, good day everyone. My name is Our Grace and Bios from Section N14. Face-to-face learning is a teaching method in which a group of students is taught course content and learning material in person. This enables a learner and instructor to engage in real time. Additionally, learners gain from increased engagement with their classmates. Face-to-face sessions are preferable because we all struggle to learn on our own, and not every student is a fast learner. We also have a variety of environments, the majority of which are distracting and prevent us from learning and concentrating. The benefits of the face-to-face class in our classroom includes being able to focus more deeply in our studies, since there will be less distractions than if we were learning at home. In a familiar, atypical learning classroom setting, and learn more easily. We students may feel much more comfortable. Face-to-face learning, in my own opinion, is better than online learning, since students have access to more learning materials on campus than they do off. Face-to-face interactions allow students to receive immediate feedback and assistance. When a student is in class, they may raise questions and seek assistance with a specific topic while it is still fresh in their minds. If a student is working from home, they would have to wait from email from the teacher. For me, safety is the highest priority in this time We are ready for face-to-face classes, I believe, because we can give vaccines and have vaccinated over 60% of our population. We just need to follow the health regulations in order to keep ourselves and our family safe if face-to-face classes is resumed.
The schools are slowly opening their gates for face-to-face classes in the midst of this pandemic. I am here to give safety protocols for students and school personnel to keep in mind as we return to our face-to-face classes. These protocols should be practiced each day to ensure that we stay safe at all times. So I am going to speak to you about what to do at 3 critical times. These are before you enter the class, while at the class, and after class. So let us first tackle what one should do before one enters the class. Firstly, sanitize your hands and put on your face mask before you leave your house. You should also keep additional face masks in your backpack and remember to include your hand sanitizer or alcohol and other materials that you need for class. So, as you go outside your house, now your main concern is transportation. Always follow the current guidelines for public transport and those for being out in public, such as wearing a face mask at all times and maintaining a safe physical distance of at least 1.5 meters. Now that you arrive outside your school, maintain your physical distance. If you took public transport, such as the bus, the multicab, or tricycle, now is a good time to sanitize your hand and then change your face mask. If you didn't take public transportation, keep your mask on and get ready to sanitize your hand and go through the entrance of your school. Now, we are in the second most crucial time, in which is while at the school. As soon as you are inside the premises of your school, proceed directly to your class unless you may need to perhaps do something as important as to use the washroom. As you enter the classroom, proceed to your seat and be mindful that the surfaces around you are possible for places where infections can spread. Be mindful of physical distancing, as usual, even in different activities during the lesson and in taking turns when using equipment. And always remember to keep sanitizing your hands. Now, we've come to our last segment, in which is what one should do after class. So, when your classes are over, remember to help restore the classroom back to its original setting, that it is if you move the furniture around or use equipment. Gather your belongings and head towards the exit. This is the time to be tempted to gather close together and move as a group. Observe physical distancing until you are outside the premises of your school and beyond. And as much as possible, avoid social gatherings or hangouts with friends, but rather head straight towards home. There is no doubt that we're all excited to return to face-to-face classes after 2 years of the online class setup. But we must all remember that safety is what's most important. And we need to ensure that we adhere to the protocols at all times. So we need to keep in mind that COVID is still real and is actually still thriving. We must be careful at all times to flatten the curve and to eradicate COVID. So that's all, and thanks for listening.
Hi, I'm Rostefa Macy Sabson from BSN and 14, and my speech will be about the face-to-face resumption. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. It has been a struggle to adapt and improvise in these times of crisis, which led to the creation of the new normal system that we have enforced to all levels of education. This system have worked fine by theoretical means, despite the technical difficulties our students and instructors face on a day-to-day basis, such as unstable network connection or unexpected blackouts, and we cannot deny that. However, we also cannot deny the fact that it lacks practical learning that the majority of students and instructor wants. In acknowledgement of this struggle and perseverance, we should re-establish the face-to-face system to courses that require hands-on schedules and performance. By reinforcing this face-to-face system, we will be able to provide more practical means and provide focus for all students which require them in all fields of expertise. I believe we should push through the face-to-face learning because online learning isn't as effective as we thought it would be. Online learning doesn't give the instant gratification of answers and help from the instructors that the face-to-face learning can. The biggest advantage of the face-to-face learning is that students can study without distractions such as their housework, and they'll be able to concentrate better in school due to the comfortable and familiar learning environment it gives the student. It also helps the students to socialize and interact physically with their peers and teachers. But how can we resume with face-to-face learning if there's still a pandemic? Well, in order to perform this despite the still existing pandemic, the Education Department will ensure to perform thorough surveys and solutions before face-to-face programs will be allowed to ensure the safety of all students. Pushing through the resumption of face-to-face, we can now give the students proper environment that is needed in order for them to learn effectively, to improve their learning capabilities as well as their mental health. If strangers can follow the guideline protocols in malls in order for them to shop, I believe that all students will follow the guideline protocols as well as we make sure that they are vaccinated before we can pursue with the face-to-face learning. That is why we must guarantee that if we presume the face-to-face learning, students have to follow the protocol so we can ensure their safety. Thank you for watching.
Hi, I am Melanie Simboles from the nursing program, and today I will be discussing resumption of face-to-face classes. The coronavirus disease 2019 crisis has impacted not only the economic, psychological, and social aspect of the world, but also particularly the educational sector to a great extent. The virus, which first emerged in December 2019, became a pandemic, leading to school closure and eventually migration to remote learning by all levels of educational institutions. And this remote learning is adding challenges to all students, having difficulties in terms of technology, individual barriers, domestic barriers, institutional and community barriers. But now, hearing the good news from our government, for almost after 2 years of lockdown, resumption of face-to-face is gradually happening. The limited face-to-face classes is now allowed under the Alert Level 1, 2, and 3, subject to certain conditions set by the Interagency Task Force Management of Infectious Diseases. The example of this condition is the indoor and outdoor venue capacity, no opposition from the respective local government units, and exclusive participation of fully vaccinated students, teachers, and non-teaching personnel. For the setup of Alert Level 1, full indoor and outdoor venue capacity for fully vaccinated individuals are allowed. Level 2, 50% indoor, 70% outdoor venue capacity for fully vaccinated, and those 18 years old below, vaccination status is disregarded. Level 3, 30% indoor and 50% outdoor venue capacity, and fully vaccinated individuals are only allowed. Hence, the students is encouraged to get vaccinated against COVID-19 virus. But those who chose not to take or get the vaccination may continue their education through other flexible learning, distance learning modalities. It is the ultimate goal of our government to facilitate safe returns of teachers, students to the schools without worry of COVID-19. The school's facility is retrofitted to accommodate the students, and that the minimum health and safety standards is strictly implemented. With the operational guidelines and structured responsibility framework of the local government officials and partners, teachers, parents, and community leaders, this resumption of face-to-face classes will go and flow smoothly and become a success.
Our lives matter as education does to us. I am Dayan K. Taglokop from BSN Section N14. It's been 2 years now since the COVID-19 pandemic occurred, and due to that, the impact brought us a lot of problems that includes the suspension of face-to-face classes. I remember the time when our advisor announced the suspension of classes, and we were really happy thinking that it would last for only a week. But it's been 2 years past, and inside those years, there are so many unfortunate things happened. We suffered from the pandemic. Some lost their job, lost their family members, some people struggled financially, and we students struggled on our studies. Due to the threat of pandemic, the schools in our country decided to temporarily close, which affects the million of us students. We are forced to adapt the new normal, which are the modular distance learning and online classes. It wasn't really easy to get used to it. It gave us pressure thinking that we would learn the things ourselves, which is supposed to be taught in school. Regardless of that, we understand that it is for our own safeguard from being infected by the disease. Recently, the Department of Education announced the resumption of limited face-to-face classes for the low-risk area. I was happy hearing the news, of course, but the terrifying feeling was also inside me. I am happy thinking that everything would finally fall on its right places. The place where we will be able to learn in school and not at home, as we'll be able to meet our classmates and find new friends. But afraid feeling was also inside me, thinking that the possibility of us being infected of COVID-19 terrifies me. Good thing that the Department of Education think the possibilities and plan thoroughly before deciding the resumption of classes. They implemented the protective measures, which are firstly, the proper hygiene, secondly, this physical distancing, third, the use of masks in schools, fourth, the cleaning and ventilation, and lastly, respecting the procedures of isolation with the people with symptoms. They carefully planned it all to ensure the safety of us students, the teachers, as well as the safety of the staffs. And therefore, for the resumption of classes, the school health protocols must be implemented and must be followed to ensure that we will be safe or at least mitigate the effects of COVID-19. After all, our lives matter as education does to us. Again, I am Diane K. Taglocop. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I am Gabriela Isabel Pitangso, taking the course Bachelor of Science in Nursing, Section N13. As the cases of this coronavirus is continuous to rise, the life of every individual also change. From engaging and bonding with their family, friends, and loved ones turns into 1 meter social distancing and avoidance from those people we didn't know. From having a freedom of doing things that we usually love, which also turns to following the protocols were given by the government. And the big change that happened was going to school every weekdays, which turns into online classes. A big change that we slowly adapted for almost 3 years. These changes became our way of living in order to stop and avoid spreading this virus. On the plan of resumption of face-to-face classes must be carefully planned in order to ensure the safety of every student as well as the teachers and school staff, especially in following the physical distancing. Face-to-face classes is a big advantage for us students. We will be able to fully understand the discussions that will be tackled by our teachers. We will be able to ask questions directly to our instructors, but I don't think it will last long. Yes, we all know that there's already a vaccine that the government provided for the students and teachers, but they can't give 100% assurance that we won't be affected by that virus. There is a low possibility, but that low or small possibility will risk the lives of every student. It may be the easier and most effective way of learning, but we must prioritize our safety and health. But about the resumption of face-to-face classes, health protocols must be followed in the university and planned it carefully. They must follow the national and international guidelines in order to ensure that every student have a safety or to at least mitigate the effects of COVID-19. After all, students' lives matter as education does. That is the responsibility of every government to ensure its fulfillment. We can't borrow life. Once it's gone, we can't have it back. That's all. Thank you.
As electronic communication becomes increasingly common and as students juggle study, work, and family life, many universities are offering their students more flexible learning opportunities. Classes once delivered face-to-face are often replaced by online activities and discussions. Online learning is praised for its flexibility because it allows learners to decide on time to complete their coursework. It allows them to engage in other commitments rather than learning alone. Online education communication is done through electronics, such as emails. Therefore, exchange of ideas between instructors and learners is not efficient, and it does not give learners opportunities to share personal values, which are believed to be fundamental in enhancing competitiveness among learners. Flexibility also applies in exams, whereby students are free to choose the most convenient time to take their test, and moreover, lecture sessions can also be adjusted to suit both students and the instructor. On the other hand, traditional education offers asynchronous coursework, in which all students converge for different learning lessons, such as learners are required to engage themselves in studies and abandon other commitments. Traditional education learning involves efficient collaboration of students and instructors. Students undertake their learning tasks as a team but not as individuals. Traditional education is characterized with face-to-face interaction between learners and instructors. Learners can respond to the question from their instructor in the course of learning process, and it is also designed to provide an opportunity to the students to develop co-curricular skills and sports and other outside classroom activities. In brief conclusion, online and traditional education shows that traditional education is highly valuable compared to online education. It appears blatantly true that online education does not produce highly competent students, despite its popularity and sophistication.
Education is an essential component of our lives, and no one can deny its importance in today's world. Regardless of what happens, people should continue to learn. Since the coronavirus disease emerged, the most affected thing in the people's lives is education. Because of the threat of the COVID-19 to millions of students, most of countries around the world have decided to close their schools. While the pandemic has forced education systems all over the world to adopt new approaches, and the department, students, teachers, and school leaders face significant challenges, new opportunities have emerged that will help us adapt to the future of education post-COVID-19. After almost 2 years of school closure due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Philippines began limited face-to-face classes in selected areas and had a minimum of MGCQ. Students may be able to go back to having face-to-face classes, just as President Rodrigo Duterte recently ordered limited face-to-face this coming January to all areas with a low risk of COVID-19. But despite the ease of mind it brings to those used to the old system, safety issues, among others, still remain. Many people want to go back to the old system of teaching in order to learn, not just comply with the task that was given. The school administrator provides safety protocols for the students. They also highlighted the importance of water,
sanitation, and hygiene facilities, as well as proper ventilation in classrooms. They also focus on ensuring that classroom layouts enable physical distancing between people. For the teachers and students who need to be fully vaccinated for them to protect themselves, classroom learning will be limited to vaccinated teaching personnel or students. Unvaccinated teachers may teach using distance learning or online modules. This also presents options for parents who are still hesitant to send their children to school. Furthermore, students are able to go back to the school, but they need to follow the safety protocols that the school implemented for them to prevent COVID-19. The administrator implements social distancing of each student, wearing masks, and also promoting proper hygiene. They also talk to their parents to see if they are willing to agree that their children will go to the school. Although vaccines are starting to be implemented in various countries, it is unlikely that the virus will be completely eliminated. But without the complete vaccination of each teacher and students, they will not be able to have a face-to-face interaction.
Good day. This is Christine Bayaramosa, and I will be giving my opinion about the resumption of face-to-face class. Schooling is one of the most affected aspects of human life due to coronavirus disease pandemic. Since the rise and threat of the pandemic, many countries around the world have decided to temporarily close schools that have affected millions of students. After almost 2 years of school closure, many of us are adjusting in our new normal. As a student who are passionate in our chosen field, this pandemic and online class setup makes it very difficult for us to stay driven. So I'm persuaded that resumption of face-to-face class is the best way to gain greater understanding so that no student left behind. Face-to-face teaching has the advantage of allowing students to quickly resolve any misunderstandings they may have about a topic. Face-to-face teaching and learning is something that is essential for students when it comes to effective learning. Online classes, on the other hand, are a safer option to traditional classrooms. They allow you to continue your studies while also protecting you and your family from unnecessary virus exposure. However, students interviewed for the research prefer face-to-face classes as they do not find the home to be conducive to learning. Yet, many students fail to study at home during the COVID-19 pandemic because to a lack of motivation as well as social media and gaming distractions. It is especially difficult for students who don't have a reliable internet connection or a nice device to use. Therefore, as a student who are passionate in our chosen field, the resumption of face-to-face class is a better option, and it gives more motivation to pursue our goals. With pure perseverance and dedication, we can move mountains. Together, we will all rise amidst the pandemic and hoping for a ligtas na balik eskwela. And always remember that COVID-19 won't stop us to strive for our dreams and what we want in life. Thank you.
Hello, I am Ivan Robert Amibanez from BSN 14. This pandemic has been really quite challenging and has affected a lot of individuals. These compromises students, teachers, and other people. Students like me are really affected by this crisis and has faced different struggles and worries in terms of online classes. According to Inquirer.net, by Secretary Leonor Briones posted on December 10, 2021, the Department of Education or DepEd issued a memorandum on December 9, 2021, instructing all public and private schools to prepare for the expanded phase of face-to-face sessions, which is set to begin in early 2022. She also stated that there is no turning back and added, as long as the Omicron variant is not here in the Philippines, for as long as the threat is deemed to be milder. She added the DepEd will not delay its preparations. As a student, it's a fresh start for a new year. The resumption of face-to-face classes would really create a new change of environment for students, especially the pandemic has been here with us for years. A lot of students will inhabit new adjustments and would probably face new struggles for adjusting. Face-to-face resumption will surely help us more in gaining knowledge and comprehensions than just keeping up with our basic online classes. Through this, we can eagerly learn and listen for us to gain proper and understanding of different learnings inside the school. This may be quite a good news for some individuals, but not all citizens are acknowledged, as what I have observed. And these times, this would be a new source of challenge and would build a great adjustment for people inside the school. Since some people are now struggling in this pandemic, and not all has the privilege to go back to the normal state since they have been adjusting at home. For me, it is also a little risky since we do not know how and when the virus will come and affect us. I see that this resumption of physical learnings will test how our country would adjust and face the crisis and test for a new normal environment. My biggest concern would go to the people who are not for in this back to more normal session, but in the end, we can't do anything about it. And just abide by the rules and still follow the safety protocols for the betterment. These are all just for us, and these duties and responsibilities that we need to abide is for our own good and for our moral state. So let us try to be more responsible in making our decisions in life and always think in a practical way and never let anything go behind us. Let us all stay safe. Thank you so much.